very much. You know, occasionally people ask me, what do you do for a living? And I tell them, oh, I work in the circular economy. And more often than not, they say something like, oh. Now, I'm not going to lie. I actually kind of like it when somebody says, oh, in regard to my chosen vocation. So I get kind of excited. And I'll say something like, so you know what the circular economy is? And the person will usually say, no. You know, intuitively, we think we should know what the circular economy is because, well, we know what circles are, and we kind of know what the economy is. And so you put them together and you get pen, pineapple, apple pen, right? The thing is, though, with the circular economy, or the CE for short, it's not really about circles. Indeed, it's not really about recycling, as many people believe it to be. What the circular economy is it's about resource productivity optimization. Yikes, what a giant mouthful that is. Resource productivity optimization. What exactly does that mean? Simply put, we try whenever possible not to use resources to create economic activities. But when we have to, we try to extract the most value possible from those resources. And that, in a nutshell, is the circular economy. So now, you're all circular economy experts. Now, in the process of implementing the circular economy, there are a number of collaborative activities. And these collaborative activities have the ability to transform communities. And it's this transformational aspect of the circular economy that I hope to talk to you about today by introducing you to a project called Circular Itoshima. So the project starts in a venue that is absolutely exquisite. It's the Itoshima Peninsula, which is in Fukuoka Prefecture, on the southern island of Kyushu in Japan. And the story begins with 9 companies. The owners of these companies, prior to this, did not know each other. As you can see, we've got an essential oil company, a turmeric farm, an organic cafe that's attached to an organic farm, a tomato farm, a sake and beer brewery that's over 150 years old that has recently added a bakery and a restaurant to its premises, a person who makes knitted goods, a mask-making company, a bamboo plantation, and finally, since this is taking place in Fukuoka, home of Kyushu Ramen, a ramen shop. Now, prior to coming together, these companies were, and still are, doing just fine. They've got a regular clientele, they are paying the bills, and probably most importantly, they're able to live in this beautiful environs that the Itoshima comprises. So here's the question though. What would happen if we bring these people together and get them to engage in a series of discussions and explorations around the idea of reimagining resource use, of trying to collaborate in order to yield mutual benefit? Well, here's what can happen. First of all, the essential oil company realizes or learns that during the process of cultivating turmeric, there is a flower that's produced that's often discarded. And this flower is really fragrant. It's a beautiful flower. It's an ideal flower for investigating the properties of essential oil. And so, here lies our first business opportunity. Now, the mask-making company hears this conversation about essential oils and starts to think about it in terms of his own products. He thinks to himself, well, let me see. Our masks, they protect others from ourselves and protect me from others, but they don't do a very good job of protecting ourselves from ourselves, if you get what I mean. And so he starts to think, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could infuse essential oils into these masks so that the mask wearer no longer has to worry about that nasty tuna sandwich that he or she had for lunch? Yet another opportunity to take a relatively mundane product and turn it into something that other competitors do not have. In fact, the mask maker also learns that the turmeric leaf has antiseptic properties, and you can actually grind this into a pulp and combine it with other materials and make masks. What a wonderful way, once again, to separate yourself from the competition. Now, as this is going on, the sake factory starts to think about turmeric, and it says, well, at the very least, what we can do is we can dry out the turmeric, and we can sprinkle it on top of the curry rice that we serve in our sake factory restaurant. Now, this is just a small activity, but actually what it does is it tells the customers this is a local experience, and that makes a difference between other restaurants that are selling curry rice and the restaurant in the sake factory that's selling curry rice. If you can make masks out of turmeric leaves, you can also weave it into a synthetic yarn, can't you? Imagine that. Look, in this awful times that we live in, with all of the problems happening in the world, don't you think people deserve to be wearing ski hats that are made from turmeric leaves? Of course they do. The last connection with the turmeric farm is, from the cafe. The cafe owner starts to think about the notion of dried turmeric and starts to think, well, wait a minute, if I reach out to other farms and combine different types of spices, I can create a curry pack and I can sell that in my cafe. A competitive advantage, something that other cafes aren't selling. Indeed, as they start to think a little bit more about what can they possibly sell that other people in the network are making, their attention comes down to the bake shop in the sake factory. The sake factory makes this really unique product. It takes sake kasu, which is the fermented remnants of sake rice, and it enfolds it into bread dough and makes bagels. So when you heat up the bagels and you break them open, the aroma you get is that fruity, aromatic aroma of sake. Most certainly, if that was being sold in the cafe, it might be a reason for some customers to go to that cafe rather than going somewhere else. Indeed, as we start to look at other connections, well, the natural one there, because they're next to each other, is that you could sell knitted goods in the cafe. And while we're at it, why don't we reach out to the bamboo plantation and see if we can't use the larger pieces of bamboo in order to make coffee cups for the cafe. The tomato farm, all by itself up there. Let's fix that problem. One of the problems with running tomato farms is that inevitably you wind up with a whole bunch of tomatoes that you can't sell. Why? Because they look funny. Our world is sadly like that. But the thing is, even though they look funny, they taste great in curry. So now we have a new business or a new economic opportunity between these two organizations. Now for me, as a Canadian, when I think about tomatoes and I think about a brewery, there's a natural product that comes to mind. You see, in Canada, we take tomato juice and mix it in with beer, and we call it a red eye. It's delicious. It's a fantastic hangover cure, and that's why we call it a red eye. So here's yet another business opportunity between two businesses that will have Canadians stampeding from all over Japan down to this sake restaurant. The tomato farmer also realizes that if you can make turmeric leaf masks, you can most certainly infuse the leaves and the components of the plant from tomatoes into a mask. Imagine that, folks. Imagine wearing a mask with the musk of a tomato plant wafting through. Okay, maybe it's not for everybody, but you get my point. It could be for somebody. Wait a minute. In our little ecosystem here, down in the bottom right corner behind me, you can hear sobbing. The sobbing is from the ramen shop owner because he's been left out. He's all by himself. Nobody wants to work with him. Let's solve that problem. You see, one of the issues with ramen is in Japan, often you'll get ramen that has three main components. Has a broth, has some meat, and has some noodles. And you combine them together. Now, in this day and age, not everybody wants to eat meat. Not only that, but this particular ramen shop makes tonkotsu ramen, which is pork bone soup ramen. And on top, they put pork. And so not everybody is a pork eater. So what this company is actually doing is they are artificially restricting their clientele. Some people just simply will not come to their organization. So why not take those tomatoes, put them into some garlic, some miso paste, add some local vegetables, add your noodles, and bang. Now we've got a product that the vegetarians in all of us will be thrilled to try out at least once, right? The sake factory. Let's talk about them for a minute, because there's lots of opportunities for them. One, of course, is quite a unique one. How about knitted bottle sleeves for presents? Not only that, but how about if we reach out to the bamboo plantation and we can ask them, look, while you're making your coffee cups, wouldn't you mind making some sake cups as well? So now we've got the beginnings of a really interesting gift pack. Is there something that the sake factory can offer to the ramen shop? Of course there is, because you remember earlier I talked about sake kasu, the fermented remnants of sake rice. Well, we could take that and mix it in with some miso, add in some meat and baste our meat in that, and then create a product based on those components. Now, in a highly contested market like a ramen shop or a ramen sector, being able to differentiate yourself in that way is a really important aspect. Innovation begets innovation. So when we're knitting, we need needles. When you've got needles, you might as well make them out of bamboo. Bang, eBay, here we come. And how about our bamboo plantation? Well, you know, the other aspect of it is if you can make turmeric and tomato plants into masks, most certainly you can make masks out of the remnants of bamboo. And finally, there's one additional connection here that's really important in a traditional Japanese sense. Whenever you make ramen, a key component to many ramen dishes is the infamous takenoko, the bamboo shoot. So, bam, gochisousama deshita. Now, let's think about this. What have we achieved here? Before, we had 9 companies. They were all selling regular products. They probably have, maybe they passed each other on the street at the most. They might have frequented each other's shops, but there was no collaboration between these businesses. Now what have we done? We've created this colorful network of 9 companies, a mosaic of creativity and innovation centering around the idea of reimagining how we use resources. And in doing so, we have built a community of people. Not only that, but in many ways, we have enhanced the competitive advantage for many of these businesses. Baby steps forward in order to achieve competitive advantage for all. Now, that to me is what the circular economy is all about. You know, certainly it's about circles and closing the loop, but what it's really about is it's about the magic that happens when you bring people together and get them to collaborate around reimagining things like resources. Now, in Itoshima, we actually haven't finished the project yet. There's still lots to be done. We need to evaluate the commercial viability of many of these things. Some of these will be dropped by the wayside. We want to discuss how we can add new product innovations to the group. We want to discuss how we can bring new companies into the fold to join this burgeoning community. But at the end of the day, at least it's a start. What's interesting to me, being involved in this project, is that when you get people together and you get them talking about a common vision, doing better together, the type of spirit that eventually exudes from the group is really inspiring. So at the end of the day, that's what the circular economy is all about, doing better together. So come on, Brunei, what do you think? You want to try and do better together? Thank you.